Hey guys, it's Lisa and Kip, and we're back for Beneath the Surface. So, we've been talking over the last 2 weeks, and a place where, I naturally go is depth. I go there on human relationships. Kip goes there on processes and systems. That's his sort of sweet spot. Um, but but depth, has different meanings to different people, and what we found, or what I found in particular, is it needs to be appreciated as a practice and not a concept. um, and we both realize that places we coach others to grow are the same places we're being asked to grow ourselves. And depth is one of them. And depth comes from curiosity, acknowledging you don't have all the answers, even in areas you're an expert, right? So you have to build it as a practice, and you have to, you don't have to do anything. I have to build it as a practice. And I have to realize that even the places I think I know something, I don't know at all. And that's where the growth comes, not just for me as a human and as a coach, but for my clients and for others. And so we wanted to talk about that today, and explore what that looks like. um, so, as I said, I go deep on human relationships. The interpersonal side is really, I don't even think about it. It's just sort of innate in me. But Kip, process and systems and things. So talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely a sweet spot for me, right? And that's diving deep, and I keep saying deep and deep, and right. So maybe I need to come up with a different word here just to change it up. But uh, going into systems and processes, and figuring out how to make things work the most efficiently for the people involved, right? That's always been something I enjoy doing. Um, and so whether it's tearing down a technology and building it, customizing it from the ground level scratch, for a specific type of organization, or if it's creating structure, helping create that structure within a team, within an organization, to adapt to the technology. That's always something that I've really enjoyed doing. But what I've seen shift, and the part that I want to grow for myself, is what you talk about in the interpersonal depth and the interpersonal relationships. Because what I've experienced so many times is sitting in a project meeting and watching that to-do list, and the agenda, and making sure we get through all these tasks. And sometimes it means bulldozing somebody because they want to talk about, oh, I don't really understand this. And it's like,
Well,
nope, gotta get through this. Gotta get
let
through
me
this.
ask you something. Let me
Sure.
ask you, sorry to interrupt you, but let me ask you something. So, as you work on a project to build a system or a process, how did you account for sort of end user experience? And because that comes into building a successful process, right? And so there is that's where the interpersonal comes in.
Right.
So how did you manage that piece of it, if your natural inclination is not depth on that side?
Right. It was, honestly,
Yeah.
in the early years, it was like, no, I didn't think about it like that. It was policy driven. It was structure. It has to do this. It has to do that. People have to adapt to it. And that was the
Wow.
approach and the
So
mindset I took into it in early project days, right? But
yeah.
as I learned more about the technology, and ways to work around things, and the importance of, hey, if we don't create a usable process or a usable system, that people want to use and understand, then you might as well not spend the money on this massive project.
Yeah.
And so you have to balance, and I learned that you have to balance that, and you have to do those projects and think about everything like that, whether it's a system, whether it's a process, with the user as the very center of that.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. It does make sense. So it just, how do you Sorry, phone ringing. Um, how do you lost my train of thought. Sorry, nothing like live and a phone I forgot to silence and now it's lost my train of thought. Um, how do you think about this when you're coaching people then? Because depth is tricky. Depth is different to different people. So and depth can be it can take you off track, right? Because you can go down rabbit holes, whether that be in a system development or nurturing the human relationship to better understand your user. So how do you balance that and set those, or do you set those limits where you have to stop here to be able to move forward and come back and go deeper?
Yeah. There's a fine line. There's a tight balance there, because obviously that when we're talking project based interviews and conversations with users, that project or those timelines are always tight. But
Yeah.
there has to be ways to break in there and say, like, hold on a second, we got to hit the timeout button, we got to hit pause, because this most critical person is, they're completely checked out. They're not listening. They have zero interest in what we're talking about right now, because they've already said that it doesn't work that way. You can't do it that way for whatever reason. And you have to hit that pause button. You have to stop and give it its and do your due diligence and explore it. When I think about the distraction of going in a different path, because of that pause, like, we've all experienced that. I experienced it this morning. I was having a one-on-one conversation with somebody. It was another coach, and we were talking about our different personalities and styles. And she was like, "Well, what about this? And don't you really think you're more like this?" And I stopped, and I was just, I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there, like I am now, but it, and I spent an hour digging into that topic and that idea and that mindset, but it
Yeah.
brought me back in, right? So my point is, going that deep and getting into the weeds of that brought me back into, and I've understood it more holistically. And in a project perspective is the same way. If you take
Yeah.
the time while you're building it, the end product is going to be better.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I struggle on the side where you're more comfortable. I'm not good with process and structure. I mean, no, I'm not. I mean, I like the guardrails, but the real process and the real system, I'll use it if it's given to me. But I tend to break the rules a lot.
You like your guardrails to be wide, loose. Let me fill in the gaps, right? I get it.
But it I just I don't know. I can't figure out where that comes from. And there are sometimes I think, eh, it's a little bit of, I must have a little bit of ADHD. Like, and I don't say that lightly, but I just can't stay on track sometimes. But I get to the finish line. I just have to get there my way.
Loose guardrails. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I'm definitely working on that because I do understand the benefit of it, obviously. But so for somebody like me who knows that I need to work on comfort in structure and systems and process, what are some tips and tricks to start to start you know working better without these wide loose guardrails?
Well, I think step one, right? You've done it. You become aware of it, right? You know that, right? And so it may be cliche, it may sound silly, but it's true. You
Yeah.
acknowledge that as something that you want to work on or need to work on. From there, it's small steps.
Yeah.
Bringing those guardrails in just a tiny bit, maybe just a couple of inches, right? And creating just a couple of steps in the process. You creating it, not just following somebody else's, but you creating it in a way that works for you.
Okay, so I've tried that, and I'm not great at creating systems. Well, I get into overthinking. I
Uh-huh.
get into, okay, here are my 5 steps, and then I'm like, what 18 did I miss? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Um,
Yep. When it branches off into the what if scenarios of what if this happens, then I have to go in a different direction. Absolutely.
yeah, so is that just where you iterate on a process, like you give it a little bit of time to use it and work it, and then you keep your list on the side of it missed, here's a hole, here's a deficiency. Is that how you work through
Yeah.
that?
I look at it as it's, just like you and I are and have talked about for months, work in progress. You look at that process as it's going to evolve over time. It's going to develop. I'm gonna perfect it over time. I don't know what I don't know yet about this process, but I do know step one is this. And step
Yeah.
two could be 2A and 2B, but for now it's step two. And I'm gonna take that step two. And what happens after that? It could be A, it could be B, maybe there's a C route, but you won't know that until you experience it. Right. And so, sure, it's easy to put a process up on a whiteboard and say, you're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G across, right, as through this timeline. But until you've actually done it, it's a guessing game. And it's where you can spend a ton of time second guessing yourself. But
Yeah.
taking those first couple of steps, being aware, taking step one is I need a process. I know I need a process. Step two after that is I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. I tend to know where I'm starting and know where I wanna go. And what happens in the middle is only for Lisa to know.
But there are people out there that thrive in that environment, but can't see. If you ask me, where are you starting, where are you finishing? I'm gonna say, well, I don't know because I need to figure out how I'm gonna get there. And so
Oh,
it's just a different way of
interesting.
thinking about it in a different way. Like I don't think about the end result unless I can kind of see how we're gonna get there. My wife, she sits in the other room. She's doing travel right now, but she'll come over
Mhm.
and be like, "Honey, we can go on this really amazing trip next year, and it's discounted by 80%." And I go, "Wow, that's fantastic." Well, we still got to find doggy daycare. We got to, right? Like we have to work in order to get paid,
Yeah,
and it's like those kinds of things before I can see that end result. And so we're just looking at it from opposite lenses and different and opposing approaches,
yeah,
right? And if we're able to work together and play off of each other, then you're going to be successful that way. And that's a lot of the projects that I've worked on have had both of those types of people that are able to play off of each other. Be like, hey, we know we need to get to this point. We need somebody to step in and help us design the structure and the flow to achieve that.
yeah. Okay. No, that all makes sense. I have found that, do you I guess it's a little different on the structure process side because people tend to go into the depth there naturally. But is that depth different than, I mean, it's driven by usually, I was gonna say technology, but that's not necessarily an accurate statement. But when you're dealing with systems and processes, there's something far more tangible that you're working on.
Mhm.
Um, do you find that in the people you coach, the organizations you work with, that they understand what depth means? Because for me, even with systems and processes, depth is, um, it's a bit more elusive than not elusive is not the right word, but it is, it isn't the answers to everything. It is more sort of seeking the unknown things in the in the substance of what you're working on.
Mhm.
Do you find that people appreciate that, or are they sort of, here's the substance and that's it? And like you ask a, you stay within, do you understand my question?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
realize I'm
No, no,
having
no.
a bit of trouble
And,
articulating it.
and yeah, I feel like I keep saying this, right? Like both both sides. I've worked with both directions. I've worked with the people that just like, just give me the theme process, give me the structure, and I'll work within it. I worked with those people, and they're great. But then I've also worked with the people who are like, no, 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 I want to do it. You just guide me along the way. Coach me on how to get there. Coach me on how to make it the most effective, the most efficient, the most, user friendly. Those kinds of. So there's absolutely, there's both of them.
So when they say coach me on how to get there,
Mhm.
do they want you to ask the thought-provoking questions that requires them to think? Or are they curious and sort of asking you questions to help get to their answer?
That's where they think they're going deep. They're deep, they're thinking deeply, and like, okay, yeah, we need to make sure we check these boxes, right? But when you get into a conversation about the five whys, why do you
Yeah.
do it that way, right? Okay, why is that? And you do that to somebody. I don't know if you've ever tried that, Lisa, with somebody, but it can piss somebody off, especially when they think they already know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it was a tool that I was taught 15 years ago, and the first time somebody used it on me, I was like, "This is ridiculous. Shut up. Leave me alone. We're not two." But it is so impactful because it gets that 5, 6 layers deep or more.
So do you think their resistance is to like lack of self-awareness, or maybe a realization that they don't know what they thought they knew? Or is it going to a bit of like a rote's not quite the right word, but like there is a little bit of life on autopilot, right? Like we know certain things and we just do them, and we don't, so we make assumptions. And then when we're asked to explain what we why,
Mhm.
that's when we realize we don't really have an answer. We don't really know. This is just because.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I will tell you, my very first real project that I got to be involved in was a technology project in HR, and I was business process guy. So it was a lot of the whys. It was a lot of the walk me through how this is supposed to work, current state. And the very first time I asked somebody, why do we do it? Why do you do it that way? And their response to me was, and I'm not going to tell you who it was, but you could look at my resume and see where I was at that time. But their answer was, that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And like, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me.
Yeah.
Like, why are we exploring these new systems and processes and capabilities if we're just going to redo what we already had in place?
The same old
You're
thing.
spending money and time and energy to just rebuild what you already did.
Yeah.
What's the point? Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if that resonates at all, but that was.
No, it does. It's interesting because on the sort of interpersonal side,
Mhm,
with relationships, with your coworkers, your peers, your superiors, your direct report, whatever the work relationships, it's a funny place because management leadership used to be about telling the team, the staff, the organization what to do. Um, and they were sort of just took your direction and did it. And obviously that's not, a leadership has evolved a lot since those days. And there's still this, you know, a little bit of discomfort with understanding what feelings and emotions mean in the workplace, right? Like not everybody's comfortable with it, and that's fine. You
mhm.
have to respect people's where people are. Um, but a lot of on the interpersonal side to develop, especially like younger generations, for our generation, if you will, at least in my experience, is that fine line of sort of, for them, depth is they go there quickly. They are willing to share everything.
Yep.
And, you know, a more feeling leadership approach is not meant to be sharing everything. And so knowing how to ask questions in ways that foster understanding and foster trust and connection, and still sort of respect boundaries,
Hmm.
is really hard when there's this whole generation that's very willing to share everything. um, and there's nothing wrong with them sharing it. It's just also wanting to help them protect themselves, right? um,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting sort of, paradox, if you will. Um, and I know throughout my career, I've definitely found myself as the person who people, do you have a minute? And close the door. And, you know, I'm learning their deepest, darkest secrets. Everybody from, the most junior person on the team to the most senior person in the C-suite. And so I've become a vault. Like, it just stays here. And I have learned how to talk to some people to help them understand that depth and sharing
Hmm.
has boundaries.
Okay.
And they're not just for me because I don't want to know something. They're also for you, so you don't regret having said something that you didn't mean to,
Right.
or,
Yeah.
like, you came out in a vulnerable moment, and all of a sudden that night you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I told her that.
I'm I don't think I've had that experience of being on the receiving end of those conversations. Um, I
Well,
would I'm curious because I know that you have a demanding job and requires a lot of coordination and how are you able to manage that though? Because I know you well enough to know that like when somebody comes to you, like you want to stop what you're doing and have a deep conversation with them and understand. But you also have competing demands. So what do you do to be like, okay, we've gone deep enough, right? Or what does that look like for you? How do you
I
set
try
those boundaries?
Okay, so usually, obviously I was in HR. I mean, I wasn't truly an HR professional, but HR fell under my purview. Um, and I was chief of staff, and so I had people reporting to me, and usually they came to me for work related something. And in the course of a conversation, their emotions, like, usually there was an emotional thing. Sometimes it was based on their personal life, and sometimes it was just the emotions about the job.
Mhm.
Um, what I did was I would, acknowledge what they're saying, acknowledge what they're feeling, and I would always bring it back to the issue we were trying to sort of resolve, and the feelings around that issue, not the larger places it may have wandered into. I didn't disregard them. I didn't minimize them. I acknowledged them, but then I refocused us on the task or the problem or situation at hand that needed to be addressed. Um, but I am a bit of a, you know, I like to help people. And so I did often find myself, saying, do you want to go for coffee after work? Do
Mhm.
you want to take a walk around the block?
Mhm.
Um, I would find ways to provide a safe space for people. If they felt comfortable trusting me, then I was gonna be that, if that's what they needed. Um, and it depended on where it went. as to how I handled it. It depended on the person. I mean, there are so many factors, right? Um, but I think the interesting thing is as coaches and building this, like I've seen so many other coaches out there, I've seen so many other small businesses, I mean, we're talking about personal depth now, but like when you talk about it as you try to build your business, so much of it and your coaching practice and philosophy, so much of it sort of skims the surface of a topic. If somebody wants to talk about authenticity, or if somebody wants to talk about, building wealth, or whatever their topic is,
Mhm.
it, it, I find that it just scratches the surface of things. So it's quick returns, and
Mhm.
that that keep people then coming back to the well because they don't understand the depth of it to no longer need the service. um and that is where I sort of I work differently. I Sure, I'd love to have you for the rest of my life, right? Like as a coaching client. But that's not that I haven't helped you if that's the reality.
Right.
Um, so I will go where people need to go. I'll meet them where at that inflection point of here's the thing that's in my way, here's the thing, and then help them, you know, build the structure to elevate out of that, and
Mhm.
so that in the future when they fall again, because we all fall, we're human, right? And different things come up that set us back, or I don't want to say set us back, but have us struggling. You have the structure and then you can build from it. And I've learned that through just years of working with people, that reminding them that that or helping them find the structure that they can lean on in times of struggle, um, and move forward from. And these, like for me in particular, all of this stuff is sort of, I think I've been working on this my entire life, and I think I'll be as myself, like working on
Yeah.
myself. Um, but it allows me to be very relatable to my clients, right? Because it resonates.
Because of the depth that you're willing to go in sharing about yourself,
Yeah,
it opens up for them.
yeah, I think
It
so.
shows them that, right? And something that you said about not wanting them to be a client for life, but when you think about when I think about it, and I coach somebody on vulnerability or authenticity or something like that, and give them enough information, and they like, okay, I got it, and they go away. But when they come back and say, hey, I need to go a little deeper there, like to me, that's the win. That's the
That's the
yeah.
win.
The ones that I worry about are the ones that don't come back and ask the
Yeah,
follow-up questions or say,
yeah,
hey, can we keep going on this, or can we talk about this now? um,
yeah,
that's where you want to keep them because you want to help them grow and go deeper in things, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not at the, like you said, not to be a client for life.
I don't want to be a crutch, because that means I haven't helped them.
Right.
If they're coming back because it's a different, we didn't get deep enough,
Hmm.
or it's a totally different sort of thing we need to work on, that's different. But if it's the same conversation over and over, I'm not the right coach for you. I didn't help you then, right?
Right. Yep.
And then thankfully I haven't had to have that conversation, but
Perfect. Perfect.
yeah.
I think I'm kind of just scrolling through my notes as far as things that I wanted to make sure we touched on, and we want to keep it at about 30 minutes. We're at 30 now. Is there any other tidbits or words of wisdom or anything that you want to share?
I think it was a bit of a wandering conversation, but I think that's what depth is about, right? And so, you know, I think to be continued, see where it takes us.
Absolutely. So, okay, we'll go ahead and wrap up. But so obviously we talked a lot about depth today, and as we talked about it, it reminded me of something you said when you and I first started talking about this topic a few weeks ago, and it's really about the work isn't about becoming perfect; it's about
Mhm.
becoming aware, right?
Mhm.
So I hope that everyone watching leaves today with a little more awareness of the friction in your own space and in your own life. Don't be afraid to spend a few minutes on that hesitation instead of plowing through your agenda items or your to-do list for the week, right? It's not about being loud, right? It's the only thing that holds the house up when the wind blows is that depth, right? So I will close by saying thank you everyone for joining us on Beneath the Surface. This was episode 2. Episode 3 will be next month. We have to do it a week late because I'll be unavailable. So we're targeting April 15th. Looking forward to
Tax
that
day.
conversation. Tax day. Yeah. I got mine done. So I'm off the hook there. So
So,
um, excellent. Thank you, Lisa. It's always great to catch up.
thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.